The Georgia Southern Eagles looking to return to the NCAA baseball tournament. It's Locked On Sunbelt.
You are Locked On Sunbelt, your daily podcast on the Sunbelt Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your teams every day. We'll continue with our 2025 Sunbelt baseball preview. We now get the coach in his 26th year with the Georgia Southern Eagles. He is Rodney Hennon. Obviously, the season started over this last weekend. They came up with an opening series sweep of Western Carolina. They are playing Georgia Tech tonight. We did get a chance to speak with Coach Hennon last week, and we talked to him about Georgia Southern hosting the regionals a few years ago in 22. They did lose out to Notre Dame, but that was not your normal hosting of regionals. They were the 16 seed. So there's not a whole lot of difference between, in that case, hosting and not hosting, right? You're going to get the 17th ranked team in the nation coming to your place. We talked to them how they go about scheduling for Georgia Southern, using analytics, and how they get back to, being in the NCAA tournament and competing in the Sun Belt. They just did miss getting into the NCAAs in 2024. We are thrilled to have him. He is the longtime coach of the Georgia Southern Eagles. He is Rodney Hennon, and he is Locked On Sunbelt. Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Sunbelt, your teams every day. Dave Schultz, your host. We are continuing our preview of the 2025 Sunbelt baseball season. We are joined by longtime Georgia Southern baseball coach Rodney Hennon. Coach, thank you so much for hopping on. And how you doing?
Doing great, Dave. This week it's always an exciting week when this Monday hits, opening week of the season. So everybody's fired up, looking forward to the start. So I'm doing well and appreciate you having me on here.
I usually wait to the end to ask this. Do you still get nervous for opening day?
I think if you don't get a few butterflies, I think something's wrong. I think that's the way it's supposed to be. Opening day. Every year you start in August and you work all fall. It's always a new faces in that clubhouse when you first meet to start the school year. And then, it finally gets here and a chance to go out and compete.
All right. So before we look ahead, let's look back a couple of years. Georgia Southern hosted regionals in 22. What was that experience like?
Awesome experience. We've always had I think a really good college baseball atmosphere here in Statesboro for years. An advantage of being in a college town, we get great support. But that weekend for that regional, obviously, it was the first time in the history of our program to host, and the atmosphere was absolutely electric. That weekend and. Great experience for our kids and a big step for our program. Generated some momentum. The last 2 years after that, we've set record sales and season tickets, and a big part of that was the momentum, from being able to host in 22.
Yeah, what do you think? Obviously, you guys came up short. You did win the first game, but did come up short to Notre Dame and Texas Tech. It should be mentioned that Notre Dame did take down Tennessee in the Knoxville Super Regional. So. No shame in coming up short. Do you think it was too much? Because, those are, big time schools and big time programs. Was it because, like you said, it was a new experience, not only playing in a regional because it had been a minute since Georgia Southern had, but now all of a sudden you're hosting. There's all of a sudden an expectation that you're going to win the regional, and you guys had some tough competition.
Well,
because there's not that much a difference between the number 16 seed and, the 17th seeded team in the NCAA tournament.
Well, you look back at that regional one, it was a very strong field.
It sure was.
Dame, had a strong case to also be a host school that year and a club that was close the year before. I think we had an older team that year and they were even older than we were. And, we actually got rained out. We had the late game on Friday night with UNC Greensboro. Notre Dame and Texas Tech got backed up. So we ended up playing Greensboro Saturday morning and played about as well as we could play in that game, and then turned around and played Notre Dame that night. And, it was an unbelievable game in front of a great atmosphere, and a game that could have went either way. And unfortunately, we came up on the short end, and then had to bounce back and play Texas Tech the next day. And again, played good baseball. We hit a lot of balls hard in that game, and just came up on the short end. But in terms of our kids being ready to play or being in awe of the moment, that wasn't the case at all. I thought we played pretty good baseball. And the big game was that game. You win that winners bracket game, you're in the driver's seat. And we came up short to a really good Notre Dame team, so I have to give them credit. So
I know you're concentrating on the game and you're trying to win the baseball game. And we've all read books that baseball moves a lot faster than it appears, and now we actually have a pitch clock that helps move it along even quicker. But I know that game was 4-4. You guys actually scored some runs to tie the ball game up, and then they tied it back. You actually took the lead, and they tied it back up. It was all knotted up, and I'm sure the atmosphere was like, "This is amazing." Did you ever turn to your coaches and like, "This is what it's all about"? I mean, are we having fun yet? Like, this is a lot of fun.
Well, I don't think in the heat of the battle, no.
No.
Everybody knows that. I mean, you could sense it. I mean, our kids. I mean, the place was going nuts. We joke. We set record beer sales. Hey, you think about it. It was a doubleheader. We had a 10 o'clock game, and then we play at night. So our people around the ballpark all day. But that's one thing we kind of joke about, with that day. But no, we've got great fans, and we traditionally draw well anyway. I think if you talk to people that have come in here and played during the regular season, I think it's a really good college baseball atmosphere.
Talking to Rodney Hennon, head coach for Georgia Southern Eagles, Locked On Sunbelt, your teams every day. All right, so as you mentioned, just haven't been able to build upon that the last couple of years. Was that a turnover of talent? What do you think happened the last couple of years? And I'll let you know, I'm much more of a reasons guy than an excuse guy. Coaches will say injuries are not an excuse. To me, that's a reason. The guys who weren't playing for a reason. So you tell me why you think, it didn't go well the last couple of years.
Yeah, well, 23 was a disappointing year for us on the field, and we didn't finish strong that year. Everybody deals with injuries to some degree every year, so I wouldn't put it on that. We had our struggles a little bit. We weren't real consistent on the mound in 23. And then if you look at our team last year in 24, we just got out of the gate slow. I mean, we're going to play a tough schedule year in and year out. We've always done that. I'm a big believer in that, not just in trying to build a resume, but obviously to prepare for Sunbelt play. And so we got out of the gate slow. And if you looked at our lineup last year, we had a lot of new faces in that lineup, a couple of veteran guys with some new players around them. And then the middle of the season, we started to hit stride, and as some of those guys settled in and got comfortable and got some confidence, we were playing really good baseball down the stretch and got ourselves back in the discussion, late in the year with a run heading into the tournament. And, I think we won 13 of our last 18 last year and got back to the championship game. And we had a back and forth, battle with Southern Miss and the championship game of the Sunbelt tournament, and just were unable to finish it off in the ninth. And even then, we're in the discussion after that. But they're probably, anytime you don't get in and you're right there on the bubble, you can always look to a couple of weekends or, 3 or 4 games along the way that make a difference. And I think that's kind of the position we found ourselves in last year. The good thing is a lot of those guys that experienced some of that for the first time a year ago are still back, and we have them to kind of build around, especially positionally this year. So I'm excited about that as we head into the start of the season.
All right, let's take a timeout. We'll come back. We'll discuss more with Rodney Hennon, the head coach of the Georgia Southern Eagles, his philosophy about going about scheduling for his Eagles and making sure guys can come through in the clutch. Baseball is that odd sport where you actually want guys to fail and see how they react so they can come through later on in the season. It is a very odd sport that way. We'll do that after I tell you about TurboTax. This is a message from sponsor Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was dealing with piles of paperwork and frustrating forms, and then waiting and wondering and worrying if you're going to get any money back. Now, Taxes is easily uploading your forms to TurboTax Expert, who's matched to your unique tax situation. An expert who's backed by the latest technology, which cross-checks millions of data points for 100% accuracy. While they work on your taxes, you get real-time updates on their progress, and you get the most money back guaranteed. And while you go about your day, no stressing, no worrying, no waiting. Now, this is Taxes. Intuit TurboTax. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service. Real-time updates, only an iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. All right, let's rejoin our head coach from Georgia Southern. He is Rodney Hennon, and he talks about his philosophy about scheduling for the Georgia Southern baseball team. And we're talking with Rodney Hennon, head baseball coach of the Georgia Southern Eagles, Lockdown Sunbelt, your teams every day. And what I like about the Sunbelt is that it doesn't come down to the last weekend. Maybe it did in your case last year, unfortunately. But there are at-large berths compared to basketball. Unfortunately, we have seen some teams that have had really good regular seasons the last 2 or 3 years not win the Sun Belt Conference Tournament basketball and not get into the NCAAs, whereas in baseball, you can win the regular season and get into the NCAAs, and there are some extra at-large berths. What is your philosophy when it does come time to schedule? Because last year, I'll be honest with you, I thought the Cajuns scheduled a little easier, and they had to go out and win about 40 to 45 games. And you know what? They did.
Yeah, no, they did. I mean, they had a great year and obviously won the league. And, I think our league is strong enough now. If you win the regular season, you pretty much lock yourself in. And if you look at our league last year, obviously 4 got in. Louisiana was a lock. Southern Miss was a lock going into the tournament. And then you had Coastal Carolina,
little sentimental bid.
Well, you had Coastal, you had JMU, you had us, and you had Troy. Four teams that were all kind of in the mix and in that discussion late. So you want to be in position like those first 2 were, to where there's no doubt that you're playing, and that's how we were in 22. We played well in the tournament and we're in the finals that year, but we knew going in. We were locked. We were in the tournament. Texas State that year was in the same position. It was just a matter of whether or not we were going to host. So you got to go start to finish, and that's one thing that we've talked about in the off season with our club is we got to get out of the gate better than we did a year ago. And you always want to be getting better as the season goes, and hopefully playing your best baseball down the stretch when the postseason does roll around.
When do you start peaking at RPI? Not that you can control it.
With it. You really, once you get into conference play, I think that's when you can. It's a little more. I don't want to say realistic, but it gives you a better gauge. I think once you kind of get deep into conference play. Obviously, early, I don't know that you can go too much off of it.
All right. So you mentioned getting off to a better start, and that has to do with you got the experience from last year. How long does it take you to figure out what you have? And so you're counting on guys that were experienced. So hopefully that does translate into a quicker start.
Well, it took us a little longer last year to settle on a lineup. I'll tell you, longer than I'd planned. I say every year, the lineup we start with opening day is never the same as the lineup we'll play with for whatever reason. It never works out that way. And usually that's the case with the rotation as well. So for this year, I think we do have a few more guys that we have history with. We've got a pretty good idea of what they can do at this level positionally. Now, when you look at our pitching staff, we have more new faces there this year. I think it's a talented group, but it's guys that we're going to have to run out there. They're going to have a chance to make an impact early on, and we've got to find out a little more, about what some of those guys are able to do when the lights come on. You got a plan going in terms of your starters and what those roles look like. And we'll have to do the best job we can. Again, trying to get that solidified earlier in the season as opposed to later. But I think we're going to learn a lot early on about some of our new pitchers.
Talking to Rodney Hennon, head coach of Georgia Southern Eagles, Locked On Sunbelt, your teams every day. What's your philosophy early on? I mean, what do you try to get out of? Are you on a pitch count? Are you going innings? Are we trying to get 5 innings in there? We're looking at 50, 60 pitches. What's your does the temperatures matter if you're playing in 75 degrees or if you're pitching in 50 degrees? How does that all play into it?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of look at the pitch counts early. It's a long season, and
exactly, yes,
and you want guys strong, down the stretch for you. But our starters have been up to 75 pitches and inter squads. Now the weather has been really good. Outside of 2 weeks ago, we had 4 inches of snow right before we were allowed to start the team practice. But since then, the weather has been really good, and we've been fortunate. We hadn't really missed a beat as far as that goes. But try to build that off, and again, you got to see what guys can do early. I mean, there's always guys that maybe struggle in the fall or a little bit in preseason that for whatever reason figured out, when the lights come on and maybe surprise you a little bit. And sometimes it can be vice versa. So, you're always going to learn a lot. And the only way to learn is to run them out there and see what they can do. And the only way to develop guys is to get them out there.
So then when do you put a guy in a situation where maybe we should pull him, but then we want to see if he can get out of the jam? When do you say, all right, maybe we should go get him, but there's runners on at second and third? Later on in the season, maybe we go get him out of there, but we need to see if this guy can get out of the jam, because maybe later on in the season he needs to get out of the jam.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day,
you understand what I'm saying?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, we're all going to do whatever in that moment we feel like is going to give us the best chance to win the ball game.
Right.
But and when you have history with a guy you've seen before that you trust, obviously it's easier to maybe stay with that guy versus a new guy. But that's where you learn a lot. That's the beauty of the game is, as you know, it's not easy. And for any player at this level, they're going to experience some of those ups and downs, some of those growing pains for younger players, especially freshmen. I mean, as you know, it's harder to be a freshman at the Division I level of college baseball now than ever before. When you think about how old all these rosters are, right. And there's a big difference in an 18, 19-year-old kid and a 22, 23-year-old, even though that younger player may have more upside, more talent down the road, that experience level, there's a big factor there. But guys have to have opportunities to fail as well. And you can't just bury guys. Right. Because if they're going to be a big part of your program, you got to run them back out there. And that's a big part of being a great baseball player, being successful in this game, as you know, is being able to handle the failure and hope. That's how you grow. That's how you get better. I look at guys that have been drafted out of it, and I share this with our younger players all the time. You look at some of our better drafts over the years. I'll tell some of our freshmen, go pull their numbers up from their freshman year, especially some of the guys on the pitching staff. Ain't nothing going to jump out at you. They had their struggles, but in almost every case, you saw those guys get better as the season went. And that's what you want to see, is just that growth. But certainly there are growing pains along the way. That's just part of it.
Well, baseball is the one sport they actually expect you, and they actually want you to fail. That's what the minor league baseball system is, for you to fail in places like Peoria and Cedar Rapids and Binghamton, New York. So you're not failing in the big cities, whereas that happens in pro basketball and pro football. So you can bounce back the next day without 20 microphones in your face. You're lucky if you have more than one guy covering the team. Usually there's one person covering the team, if you're so fortunate, maybe a couple of TV stations. And so that's the idea, that let's see how they bounce back after they fail. Not that you want them to fail. Obviously, you're trying to get them to win the game. But there is, if he does fail, all right, now we have to see if he bounces back the next day. We're trying to get him to succeed, but I'm a hashtag always a bright side guy. Let's see how he bounces back, because we need to see if he bounces back, is the point of that conversation.
No, absolutely. I mean, say it all the time. It's a game of failure. I mean, just look at the numbers.
It is, yeah. Baseball is the one sport where now if you throw it less than 65% of the time, you and I grew up. If Terry Bradshaw completed 50% of his passes, that was a good day. Now, if you throw it less than 65%, you're having a bad year. Let's take one more time out. We'll come back and wrap up our conversation with Georgia Southern Eagles baseball coach Rodney Hennon about how he goes about using analytics, right? He's been doing this a long time. Analytics has been around for a little bit more than we'd like to imagine. But obviously he started it when nobody was using analytics, and now he is using it moving forward. And we'll talk about how Georgia Southern, who he's counting on to compete with in the Sun Belt. We'll do that after this. All right. Hope you have enjoyed the baseball preview. We're continuing. I think I have two more coaches, and we'll see when we get to them. We do want to talk about that Arkansas State South Alabama ball game probably on Thursday, and then we can do whatever games are coming up on that day as well. So that'll be on the Thursday episode. That's the Wednesday, so we'll figure it all out. I have reached out to the teams that have not come on, and we'll see if they get back to me. I am training on Tuesday at a different distillery, so we will see who gets back to me for Wednesday when I'm off. So hopefully you have enjoyed it. We have had more than half of the conference, so I really do appreciate everybody who's come on. I think they've enjoyed it, and we will see if we can get the rest of them. And remember, we only have a couple weeks left in fact, two weeks left. Well, there's 3 weeks. It's 2 weeks left of the regular season, and 3 weeks from Monday where they will crown a champion in the Sun Belt Conference Tournament. So, and there's all kinds of ways. Even Jeff Goodman from the Field of 68 was like, "Oh my God, we have 4 teams tied for first place in the Sun Belt." No kidding. Nice that you could join the rest of the parties there, Jeff. We appreciate the exposure. All right. Again, thanks to everybody for following. We're up over 1,870 subscribers, still trying to get to that 2,025. All right. All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your teams every day. Let's wrap up our conversation with the head coach of the Georgia Southern Eagles, Rodney Hennon, how he goes about using analytics and who he is counting on to compete in the Sun Belt in 2025. We're talking with Rodney Hennon. He is the head coach of the Georgia Southern Eagles. Been doing this a long time. How have you incorporated analytics? Because that has, that's been Johnny come lately. You and I grew up with average home runs and RBI. We did not know, bat speed back in the day.
I've learned over the years to get people around me that are a lot smarter than I am. So I've tried to do that. Now we have people on our staff. We have a grad assistant that is outstanding with the analytics part. He's been a part of our program as a student assistant, now a GA. Just had a real interest in it. So he works alongside Coach AJ Batista, our pitching coach, with that and our pitching staff, and they work really well together. And I think we're careful with it. I think there can be overload with some of that if you're not careful. At the end of the day, you still got to go out and compete between the lines. And so, you never want to lose that competitive edge and see guys get paralyzed because they're, too wrapped up in some of the analytics. But obviously it's a useful tool for development. So I think we would be crazy not to use it. And we do. And it has been helpful. We've got a big renovation project on campus with our facility right now. We actually we knocked down our clubhouse about 2 weeks ago. And so we've got a brand new clubhouse. It's a $10 million project. And on the bottom level of that facility, we'll have indoor batting cages, and we'll have a quote pitching lab, to where we'll have, all the technology in there, for our hitters and pitchers. So it's a big part of development, and obviously it's a big part of recruiting now as well. So, you have to have people that can incorporate it in the right way.
So do you take credit when the move works and you blame it on the grad assistant when it doesn't?
No.
So by the shade of the red of your face, it seems like that is
hey, I'm old school. So every now and then I will have to tell them, hey, I don't want to hear about your spin rate. Let's just get out there and compete. Throw strike one.
Right. He's Rodney.
We've all been there, I think, a few times.
We've all been there, right? I mean, again, you still have to make the pitch. You still have to hit the ball. It's just like the manager from Bull Durham, right? Throw the ball, pitch the ball, throw the ball, hit the ball, field the ball, right? He's Rodney Hennon, head coach of the Georgia Southern Eagles. All right, tell us about the guys who are coming back that you're counting on.
Yeah. Well, I think position-wise, you probably start with our leadoff man, Josh Tate. He sparked us a year ago. Leading hitter coming back, stole, I think, 27 bags for us. And, played every day pretty much at second base a year ago. He's been working in center field, and that's another nice thing about Josh, a lot of versatility there. And, I think as a guy that, has a chance to go on to the next level. And, I kind of see him as a really good utility guy, at the professional level. But, he continues to develop. And it was one of those new players a year ago. Sean Smith, and one of our outfielders in left field, again, was one of those new junior college transfers last year that when we brought him in, we felt like was going to hit in the middle of the order. Just got off to a slow start. And then when we got rolling in the second half, he was probably our hottest hitter down the stretch. And I think he has an opportunity playing every day to be one of the top hitters in our league this year as a senior. We've got some experience in the middle. Cade Parker and Luke Odden, 2 JUCO transfers last year. Cade came on again, kind of like Sean Smith, came on middle of the way and finished the year with 10 home runs, played a steady shortstop for us, really athletic. Luke's just one of those grinders, really strong defensively, handles the bat down at the bottom of the order for us. And, we feel like we've got as much depth behind the plate as we've ever had since I've been here. I feel like we've got 4 guys that we're confident that all 4, could go out and start a game for us. Sean White and JD Kaiser kind of shared the load last year. JD DH'd, both with DH when they weren't playing. Both those guys are getting some work at first base as well. And then Daniel Hab, a senior who, again, if he's not catching, can help you out in the outfield a little bit. One of those versatile athletic guys similar to Tate. And we picked up a transfer out of the portal from Alabama, Sammy Lease, who really good catch and throw guy, some pop with a bat. So, I don't know that I could ever say I've had 4 guys I would be comfortable starting a game with. And, we feel good about that. And a couple other portal guys that, we'll factor in Nico Sanit. We lost a really good player at third base last year, and Jarrett Brown, who defensively is probably as good as I've ever coached over there. Nico Sanit, a Georgia Tech transfer, is similar to Jarrett from the standpoint there's athleticism there. I always felt like Jarrett was a shortstop playing third, and I think you could say the same thing about Nico, and he just got really good feel for the game as well. So he'll be a big part of what we're doing. And then another Georgia Tech transfer, Jet Lovett, in the outfield, senior, capable of playing all three positions, runs well, hits from the left side. And then a couple other guys that I think will give us a little added pop. Cam Foster, transfer from Liberty. I think hit 15 home runs his sophomore year up at Liberty, 12 a year ago. Physical, 6'5", right-handed hitter. And then the young man, Juju Stevens, who's a Missouri transfer as well, gives us some pop. Those guys will be kind of battling for the DH spot. You might see Juju out in left field some as well. So positionally, that's kind of where we're at. And then, like I said earlier, a lot of new faces on the mound. The two guys that we do return that threw some big innings for us, Jacob Phillips, a left-hander, threw mostly out of the pen, got a few starts last year. He looks to be a starter this year. He's going to get the nod on Saturday of opening weekend. I feel like he's improved. He's a 3-pitch guy, competes really well. Joey White, a guy that, was a go-to guy to the bullpen. I think the stuff has played up a little better this year as well, and gives us some experience on the back end, closing games. Love the fact that he can bounce back as well. And then some other guys that'll, be big factors for us are new players. A Louisville transfer and Cade Grundy will get the nod on Friday night. He's going to be anywhere from 91 to 94, 3-pitch guy. Obviously pitched at a high level in the ACC. And then we'll have a freshman left-hander, 6'6" lefty, Thomas Burke, that'll start the Sunday game, opening up the weekend. I think Thomas has got a little pro interest out of high school. We were fortunate to get him here. He's one of those guys we just got, like we talked about earlier, we're going to have to run him out there and develop him this year. But if you look at our staff, one thing I like about it, we've got 11 left-handed pitchers on the roster. Never had that many left-handed pitchers on a staff before. Several junior college and portal transfers. So I think we'll have the ability to match up when we want to. But still, a lot of
though somewhere along the way.
Yeah, we got a few right-handers too, but still some unknown.
Sure.
More unknown on the pitching staff going into the season.
You mentioned Josh Tate, and he played every ball game. I'm going to guess you remember someone named Kyle DeBarge had as good a season as I remember in the Sun Belt. He seemed to have a pretty good series in Statesboro last year. But I think he, not the biggest of all guys, I think he tired at the end of the year, and there seemed to be some opportunities to take him out of some games, either that they were on the losing end of it or on the winning end of it, where he wasn't playing each and every inning. So a little physical rest and maybe more mental rest, and maybe even give him a Sunday off. And of course, Matt Diggs is going to tell you he's not coming out of a game because he's Kyle DeBarge. He's going to compete.
Well, I would have been fine with Matt giving him some time off when they were in Statesboro.
Of course, please, Matt, take him out.
I'm glad that guy's gone.
Right. So how do you deal with that? But I did think that Kyle got a little tired at the end of the year. How do you measure that when we need him at the peak time of the year? Having him ready and yet having him play all the time. I mean, Josh started every ball game. I don't know if he missed some innings, but how do you have him ready and rested, so to speak?
Yeah, I mean, there may be times where you can get a guy out of a game late, but man, you want those guys in your lineup every day. And from the other side, a guy like Kyle DeBarge, you appreciate the way that guy played the game. You could tell, that guy was a grinder, and that's why he became the player that he became. And, guy like that in our lineup last year, Sam Blancato, was one of those grinders. And, you're going with those guys every day. And same thing with Josh Tate. What I appreciate about Josh, he loves the game, man. He loves to go out and compete every day. And he's a baseball player. And when you can find those guys that just have feel for the game, you need those guys on the field as much as possible. But to your point, if there are opportunities late in games, hopefully where you're up, and you can rest those guys' legs a little bit to keep them fresh as much as possible. I think where I'm hopefully better as a coach now than I was when I was younger is having a little better feel for just our overall team as far as their legs and knowing maybe when to back off, especially with practices, even leading up to opening day, knowing days where you can be out there longer and push a little more, and maybe some days where you need to lighten up a little bit. And I'd like to think I'm better with that part of the game than I used to be.
Well, I presume that gets a little bit that means a little bit more the hotter it gets in Statesboro, because it just gets too warm to obviously got to hit and you got to practice, but somewhere along the way you got to dial it back. You can't have
and it may be little things it may be little things just as simple on a Sunday later in the year when it's warm. You're not taking BP on the field. Hey guys, go down to the cages, bang it around a little bit, and we'll get a few ground balls and we're ready to play. And at that point in the season, but yeah, just you try to do the best you can. But hey, come May, everybody's feeling it. I mean, that's just the way it is. We joke all the time. Everybody's healthy. Everybody's feeling good come opening day. And nobody in the training room this week. Everybody's ready to go. But we're all going to be a little banged up when we head to Montgomery. That's just the way it's going to be.
Always is. Always is. It's a grind. He's Rodney Hennon. He is the head coach of the Georgia Southern Eagles. Really appreciate your time helping us preview the 2025 season. Hope to catch up with you sometime during the year. Best of luck this season, Coach. Thanks for hopping on Locked On Sunbelt.
Well, hey, Dave, appreciate you having me on. Appreciate what you do for our league.